My name is Nick Harvey, and next to me is Jane Worrell, and we are part of the Revenues and Benefits team here at Folkestone and Hythe District Council, and we administer and sort out the council tax and housing benefit for our area. What I'd want to do first is just give a bit of a broad view, very, very light, about what our area is like, because some of you may know Folkestone from the Channel Tunnel, but not know much about us at all, really. What we want to say is that the Folkestone and Hythe is based around the towns of Folkestone and Hythe, but we also have a large rural area as well, down on the Romney Marsh, heading out to East Sussex. As far as the council tax is concerned, we look after approximately 52,000 dwellings and have about 8,000 housing benefit claims. We are really a district of contrasts. Due to our location, we're close to the continent and close to London. So therefore we have very, very rich areas, multi-millionaires, but we also have pockets of deprivation in our urban areas as well, which obviously is what we're focusing on today. Because we're also on the south coast, we have a relatively high pension age as well in comparison to the working age population. Because we have an elderly population, we have long-term care issues and care needs that we have to budget for as well. In terms of the urban areas, we also have quite a few landlords who are controlled of large houses that have bed-fit accommodation, which is transient, low income. So we really need to have a look at those as well. A number of our residents in our urban areas, we don't have English as a first language, so I just want to give you a bit of a broad view about what Folkestone and Hythe is like, but I'll just pass over to Jane about how we got the dashboard and what we've been doing so far.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'd just like to say from the poll, if before we got the dashboard, we would have been in that 44% in as much as we did very little and very simple benefit assessments. We first saw the LIFT dashboard in a conference in 2017. I saw it and liked it and thought that was something that we could make use of, but at that time we had no funding. We returned to conference in 2018, and by that time we had managed to find some funding to purchase it. And we looked at it again, saw it was something that we wanted. We had the funds and we went ahead with our purchase. By the time we'd gone through that, and those of you that work in revenues and benefits will know that annual billing in March and April does take up an awful lot of time. We didn't actually receive our dashboard with all its data in until July last year. Very quickly after that, we realised the cut-off date for the mixed age pension credits being the 15th of August. So then our very first campaign, which turned out to be the mixed age pension credits, became a matter of urgency. So it was something which we sort of very quickly had to gear ourselves up into how we were going to deal with it. And I'll hand back to Nick to tell you how we did it.
Thanks very much, Jane. What we did was we used the LIFT dashboard to identify the households in our area where there was a mixed age. So one is a pension age and one is still at working age. We then used those details, the 98 households that were identified, we then used the LIFT dashboard to prioritise them in terms of financial vulnerability, to make sure that we called the people who were in crisis or at risk first, and then move down to the ones that were struggling and then coping. As Jane has said, because there was the reduced time frame, we didn't really have enough resource to organise a mail shot. So it was just a matter of getting 3 of our benefit personnel who understood what the claims were going through to give them a call. In terms of actions, what they did was they reviewed the claim to make sure that it was still up to date. There hadn't been any changes to circumstances that would then throw them out of the opportunity to get the pension credits. I know the policy and practice guys are looking to go onto an updated model, but at that point there was still a 3-month delay between the info we were sending over to policy and practice and us getting the dashboard back. So we needed that time just to review the claim before we actually started calling people. So we had 3 benefit personnel calling out to our contacts, the 98 households, explaining why they were calling, encouraging them to apply, not through us, through the DirectGov website. I think that's a really important point to prove that we weren't scammers. We weren't sending them a link, and we weren't asking them to do something on their computer that they wouldn't otherwise already do. We were going through a recognised website in order for them to claim what they needed to claim. And then made a contact, brilliant, and we spoke to them, and we left a message because it was mostly mobile phone numbers that we were calling from, and we left a message if possible. One thing I would like to touch on was there have been a few concerns about Data Protection Act issues, about people almost cold calling customers in order to offer them money, not to put too fine a point on it. We never had an issue with regards to customers challenging us with regards to using their data incorrectly, or it was big government or any of those phrases that you sometimes hear. The fact that they were already claiming benefits with us means that we already had the information anyway, and it was just helping them out. Yes, we can see that one of you is pensioner, one is working age, you may be eligible for this, please apply before this date, because you could be losing out on money here. Yeah, and then if we didn't make contact, then we set up a second chaser call as well to try and speak to them. Yeah, so that really helped. And we had a really positive impact. Of the 98 households, by the end of the project, 51 were claiming pension credits. There was a few pushbacks in terms of they didn't want to claim, they weren't contactable, sometimes the mobile phone numbers fell out, or a change of circumstances. For example, the partner moved out, so they moved out of our area and were therefore no longer entitled. 17 said they were going to try to claim, but having reviewed their claims later on, there's no pension credits on it. So that might have been a circumstance where they might just want us off the phone to start talking to us. And we left 4 on messages, but we've got no way of knowing whether those phones were still in contact or not, still have a signal and things like that. So as I said before, 51 households claiming pension credits. For a couple, it's £255 per week, which meant 676,000 annually brought into our district, which I think is an awesome result for what was, in realistic terms, a few afternoons by 3 benefit staff in order to call them out. I would just like to highlight one result where one of the first people we called was a household that was identified by the Lift dashboard at risk, and they were behind in their old council tax debt and they had liability orders. Because of the money that we were able to get for them, that cleared out the old debt, and they are now currently paid to debt for 2019 and 20. And hopefully that change in circumstances, the money that they were able to get will help them moving forward and be able to, so it means that we've got the money, so it was to our advantage as well. What I'll do then is I'll just pass to Jane again about the next stage of what we're doing.
So these are the other campaigns that we have already completed. We identified discretionary housing payments as an area that would help people that were struggling. So we looked at 96 lone parent cases, 44 couples with children, 32 couples with no children, and 44 singles. We always, when we target them, when we look at those at risk, struggling and in crisis. Those that are coping, if we have the resource, we will look at those, but we tend to prioritise those that we think would make the most use of getting extra money. Of the lone parents, the 96, we've had 16 apply for DHP and 8 of those have been awarded so far. Of the couples with children, 6 applied and 4 have been awarded so far. We haven't completed the analysis on the couples with no children or the singles, and we are very much aware that our DHP income box is overflowing at the moment. We've actually had to put the team that deal with them onto overtime because there's an awful lot of people applying. We then did some work on those cases that are not in receipt of CTR, so the UC cases that were mentioned earlier. So there were 49 of those that we've looked at. We haven't had a chance to finish the analysis on those yet. And also we looked at 8 cases where the severe disability premium may well be eligible. And that was very recent. That was only in the last couple of weeks. So we haven't had the outcome for that as well. So then moving on to the overview from the benefit take-up, I'll hand back to Nick because this is his area because he does the interrogation of the system.
Certainly. Yeah, and George, jump in whenever you like with regards to this as well. This is our benefits take-up in terms of what the screen, the desktop that we use in order to get the details to try and identify the customers. Jane mentioned just on the last screen that there are 8 types of severe disability premium. If you look halfway down the screen, we've got severe disability premium, 8 types. Because it is a relatively small number, we just highlighted those straight away, especially when it could be worth, you know, that £2,500 per month in extra income. And by the nature of what they are applying for, all the money that they could need, all the money they have would obviously help in their situation. Moving forward, we're along with policy and practice and a few other practitioners who are involved with policy and practice, we're going to start looking at pension credits, which is 1,148. I don't think we're going to do the full amount, but what we're going to target is the over 75s that are also eligible for TV license. And so that figure is 756. So we're going to start targeting those in the very near future in order to help get them as much as we can in terms of pension credits. And then I'll pass back to Jane in terms of our approach for how we're going to do that.
Okay, so our approach, when we first got the dashboard, one of the most crucial things we decided on when we decided to get the dashboard was that we needed some resources within our team to be able to process the results and do something with it. Very well aware that in the past we had purchased software, but the results that came from it we weren't able to process and use in the full way that we wanted to. So when we purchased the dashboard, at the same time I put in a funding request for an additional officer, and we recruited one officer who is currently recruited until June, but we have got funding and I'm expecting that to carry on. She is a fully trained benefits officer. She actually works from home. She doesn't come into the office, and it has been her job to work on the lists that we have provided her from the dashboard. So the first thing that when she got the first list was to understand the data that she had received and to work out a really formula for approaching the customers in a sensible way. So the first thing she decided to do was to review the claim. So she went through all the claims, made sure that she understood the detail, made sure that everything on the claim on the processing system was correct, and then she started phoning them. As Nick's already mentioned, the data protection issues that I know some authorities have come up against, I can honestly say we haven't come up against any of those at all. We haven't had any complaints from customers with regards to us calling them. And I think that is down to the way in which we approach it. There is a slide coming up on the vulnerability work that we have done, and that has really gone hand in hand with our approach to the use of the LIFT dashboard, because the customers that we are talking to, some of them are extremely vulnerable, and it isn't just a simple case of calling them up and having a conversation and asking them to go online and complete a form. For many of them, that isn't an option that they can make use of. At the same time as buying the dashboard, we bought the benefit and budgeting calculator, and we encourage customers to use that when we contact them. We use it if they're completing a form. We help them to complete forms. We help them to use the calculator. All that's done in one phone call from our dedicated officer. As part of the work that she did, we identified that many people in receipt of housing benefit and universal credit didn't know anything about DHP. They were completely unaware of it. So although they were interested in her phone call, they wanted to know more. So we could point them to government websites, but we decided to create a flyer that we could send to people, or more normally we would email it to people, which gave them details of what DHP is all about, pointed them to the website and pointed them to the application form. As part of this, we also had an added bonus in which we spotted some fraud cases. That wasn't something we thought was going to happen from doing this exercise, but we spotted 2 fraud cases which are actually still with our fraud officer at the moment, where we suspected that single claimants were not actually single anymore. So that was something we didn't expect, but it is something we do target fraud and we are very aware of it. So that was an interesting outcome. So I mentioned vulnerability. This has been a complete change of culture in our authority, not just from a benefit angle, but very much from a revenues collection angle. We worked with the Money Advice Trust on this, and they came in and did some consultation with us in April last year. And we realised very quickly that we actually didn't know very much, which was a bit of a shock to us. But we've now got a vulnerability team. There are 6 people within the team. And we've started to see vulnerability in so many areas and in the things that we do. We have changed the wording on our recovery notices. So rather than just demanding money, we're now asking people to contact us and asking them what help they need and what support they need to enable them to make payment. Identifying the vulnerable customers, we do that largely over the telephone, but also when we receive applications for benefits, when we receive applications for financial support with their council tax or from a DHP application. We have identified an awful lot of customers who need a different approach to the way in which we communicate with them. Very simply, they were vulnerable in as much as when we wanted to talk to them, they weren't in a position to talk to us. Could be because they needed a carer with them at the time, or it could be that they were on medication, which meant they couldn't speak to us easily in the morning, or that indeed we just needed to be aware of the third party, their power of attorney or their appointee, which we didn't actually know. Some people, they won't answer the telephone, so those people like to have an email to say that we will call at a certain date. And all these things we are now noting on our system. We obviously have to obtain explicit consent for them to do that, but we explain it to customers in a way to say that if they tell us all about their circumstances now, we will note that on the system. So if they need to talk to us again, they don't have to go through it again. Anybody in customer services or the revenues and benefits team that talks to that customer is aware that they have a need which may not be the norm. So it does help us in making communication to those customers. We do have 2 welfare officers. I appointed a new one yesterday. Again, this is something which we've identified as a requirement, and it is for those people who need that little bit more support. The low take-up of benefits we've discovered from doing this work can be attributed in a number of cases to the fact that people can't simply go online. They can't read and write, and those people tend to stick their heads in the sand. They get very angry with us because they don't understand, and we needed to take steps to understand them and their needs. And up until we went through all of this, we did it, but not in a very clear way that we do it now. We have created a signposting list to help our customers. It's got tabs on the bottom of it. So if a customer, their problem is addiction, their problem is a bereavement, their problem is debt, their problem is that they are going through any sort of crisis in their life, then the staff can go onto the signposting list and look at an organisation that may be able to help them. We can't insist on it, but a lot of customers, and I've spoken to them myself, when you ask them what support they are getting for the problems that they have, they inevitably say not a lot, or they don't know where to go, or they don't know that there's anything out there. So it's really encouraging the feedback that we are getting from customers. So it's a tough job to do, to talk to people in these circumstances. And some of the people we talk to, their circumstances are distressing. It's distressing for staff, and I can't imagine what it's like for them. But the feedback we're getting from those customers definitely helps us and drives us to go forward and do more. So what's next for us? As Nick mentioned, the pension credits, that is our next target, and we will be doing those that are eligible for the free TV licence, the 756 cases. They will be going to our dedicated resource officer in the next week or so. At the moment, our approach is to make an initial phone call to them and invite them to claim through the DirectGov website. If we don't make contact with them on that initial phone call, we will send them an email to advise them that pension credit is available, and again provide the links and why we are contacting them to say that they may be eligible. If we can email them, that's what we will do. If not, we will do a letter. If we identify throughout the whole process that there are any unusual circumstances that we need to look at, that could be down to the vulnerability of the customers, or it could be down to fraud, then we will look at those in a slightly different way. And if we think those customers may benefit from a visit, we are fortunate at our authority, we do still have visiting officers, but we will also pass those to the welfare officers, who may make an appointment either for them to come into the office or for us to go out to their homes and speak to them.